Damn, this question stumped me, and it really made me think about the answer to it. Driven Mofos, welcome back to another episode of The Underestimated Entrepreneur. So, I was just chilling the other week. I was working with a business owner. We're just sitting there shooting the shit. I'm helping them build their culture guide, and which, by the way, is probably the most important thing that you'll do if you're a business owner. If you do not have a proper, clear culture guide, you will struggle to have staff work effectively and efficiently and consistently grow the business. You've got to remember that as a business owner or as a leader in a business, and also as a high-level manager in a business, you essentially have to put boundaries in order for people to follow. If you don't have a culture guide, it is almost impossible to drive performance and behavior in that company. I just had a business today that I was working with. They've hired me next year to come and do some consulting with their company. They're quite a large firm. And one of the issues that they're having was staff performance. And so I said to them, well, what does your culture guide look like? And they said, well, we've got some values and some stuff like that. And when they read out the values, I went, nah, they won't work at all. I said, if I walked out onto your floor of your business and I spoke to staff members and said, what are the values of the company? Would they be able to tell me what you just told me? And they both laughed and they said, no way. And I said, therefore, they're not the values of the organization, and you are not going to be able to drive staff performance with those values. Therefore, your culture guide is incorrect, which means that your marketing is probably going to be inefficient or ineffective. And also, there's going to be a lot of issues with, I guess, customer retention and stuff like that. But here was the question that stumped me. They said, what is culture? And I thought, damn, what's the answer to that question? How do you define what a culture is? And I really had to think about it. I thought, well, when a company or an organization has clear values and those values are communicated effectively on a daily, yes, that's right, a daily basis, and you drive staff performance through those values and you do it properly by having a proper culture guide, then what does that do? What does that mean? And I really thought about this. And what it was is that culture is the energy of the company. So if you walk into any business, essentially the values of the business should be the energy of the business. So if we say, I'll just give an example. If we say that performance is a value of a company, and you walk into that company and everyone's just bumming around and staff are complaining about how hard everything is, the energy of the company suggests that performance is not a high value. If we have a value of accountability, and in that business, everybody is super accountable. Like I say, I'm going to send you an email. I shoot you off an email immediately after the conversation that I have, then that's being accountable. If you say to your staff, well, accountability is important, and they don't do something, and then you reprimand them, then that's the culture of the company. I see companies that have things like kindness and compassion and we care. Yeah, I sit in the boardroom with a whole bunch of their directors and they're like, oh, we don't really give a shit about that. We just want to make money. We need to increase profits. And I go, wow, isn't that interesting? The energy of the company is all around money and profits. Yet what you're telling me is that the culture on the wall says compassion and kindness because you're trying to impress customers or you're trying to impress other people versus get people to perform. So when we think about what culture is really the energy of something, whether it's a sports team, whether it's a business, whether it's an organization, whether it's a firm, whether it's a council. It might even be your home. Like if you say honesty is important in your home and that's the value of your family, and then I walk into your family dynamic and your kids lie to each other and you lie to your partner or you lie to your husband or your wife about why you do what you do. Let's say you're out and about and I'm with you and you tell me that honesty is important. It's an important thing in your family and that you want your kids to be honest. But then the next second you're telling me not to tell your wife that you're now going out drinking and having a couple of drinks after work and that you're just going to tell her that you work back late. Then you have an incongruency in the value of your family. So what we've got to do is we have to align the energy, and it's about having honest conversations. Also, when I think about the energy of an organization, there's something that I came across and it keeps popping up quite a lot in the last 2 months. I read a book years ago called Power versus Force, and I think it's by David Hawkins. Now, in that book, I don't necessarily agree with everything in the book, right? Like I read a lot of books, I recommend a lot of things. I don't always agree with everything. What I suggest is that you learn how to think, not be told what to think. And that's what I love doing in my community as well and why I do these podcasts. Because I really want people to learn how to think, not just be told what to do. Because when you do what you think you should do, then when you make mistakes, you don't know how to analyze it. You don't know how to assess things. Even a lot of the business owners or a lot of the people that I do consulting with, many of them, I spend a lot of time training them how to think through situations, how to think through problems. You can't really solve a complex problem with simple solutions. You can't really do that. So anyway, in the book Power versus Force, in there they talk about how your energy essentially controls the external reality around you. Okay, now there's part of me that, yes, I do believe in that. I don't understand the physics completely behind it, although I've studied a lot of different theories around it. I don't know that I 100% necessarily agree with it because I don't have the science and data to back it up. But what I do know is that when we change our emotional state in some way, shape, or form, and we change our thought processes, we tend to shift the results that we get. So when someone complains all the time and they're whinging and they're moaning and they're bitching and they, I never have enough money, I never have enough time, what I know is that they're living in a world of lack. They never have enough. So when they get time, they're going to fuck it all up anyway and waste it because they never have enough time. That's the excuse that they keep giving themselves. So essentially they reinforce that pattern. When people tell me that they don't have enough money, it's because they see money as a physical form, not as an energy. That energy then creates value exchange. So when we talk about money, money is an exchange of value. How do we create value? We make it out of thin air. So if you look at Mark Zuckerberg, he created Facebook. It was an idea. That idea came to fruition and he focused on it. And then he started acting in a way or in accordance with that vision. And because of that, now he has Facebook or Meta. So there's something in this in regards to energy. There's a lot of woo-woo out there. I sort of sit in the middle. I love studying philosophy. I love studying a bit of woo-woo. But I also love studying hard science. So I get a bit of both. So anyway, in this book, Hawkins talks about energy. And what he said is that different emotions have different frequencies, which I probably partially agree with that as well. I don't know that we can define the frequency behind it because there's no real way of testing and measuring it that's been accurately scientific proven to be true. I know there are plenty of people out there who say, yes, you can measure the frequencies, but I haven't seen that it's scientifically valid yet to be able to do that, right? Now, I've been around a lot of people who use different machines and whatever. I get it, but I'm just saying I haven't seen it 100% scientifically valid yet, right? It's not like a heart rate machine where a heart rate machine, you can say, yes, it's scientifically valid. It gives a correct result at a very high level. Therefore, we know that our heart rate or our pulse rate or whatever we're measuring is fairly accurate. I don't know that we could say that with a frequency or a bioenergetics machine or whatever. So coming back to it, when you look at his chart, in his chart, he says things like, we have shame, we have guilt, we have apathy, we have grief, we have fear, we have desire, we have anger, we have pride. And then what he talks about is that these things, these emotions, are essentially driven into these processes that we have. So we have processes like we want to try to eliminate things from our life. We can create destruction. We can create addictions. We can create a dependency or withdrawal from things. We can become enslaved. We can have aggressions. We can have infatuation around things. When we look at those emotions are essentially fear-driven. Now, David Hawkins didn't specifically say this stuff. This is from my work and my studies. All of those, what you could call negative emotions or disempowering emotions, are driven from fear. Now, that fear makes us feel a certain way. It makes us think a certain way, and we use different parts of the brain. So when we become more emotionally driven or fear-based driven or survival-based driven, we're essentially using a part of the brain called the amygdala, which is the emotional center. It's more centered on survival. So we're trying to get our survival needs, which might be fitting in. Most people don't know this, and most people in the field of psychology don't understand this. But when we're in our emotional center, that's essentially a part of the brain called the monkey brain. And it's been wired to try to make us fit in, so our emotions help us to fit in with groups of people. Now, that's a very important survival need, because if you're in a group of people, you're more likely to survive in nature than if you're an individual. So that monkey brain helps us to fit in with people around us. What happens though when you want to stand out? What happens when you want to be a leader? What happens when you want to do better than the average person? Well, now you're going to stand out. All of a sudden, someone gets online, they start judging and criticizing you, or they give you negative feedback. And the next second, you're having this visceral emotional response because the fear center of your brain is kicked in and you're afraid of being kicked out of the tribe, which now the tribe is a whole planet full of people who use Facebook and Instagram. And so if you have an emotional reaction, that visceral reaction to people's judgments or people's criticisms, it's because you've had a fear-based emotional response where you feel like you're not going to fit into a tribe, and that triggers safety and survival response. So now, how do we get out of it? Well, what I have a little card here if you're watching on YouTube. And by the way, if you're not watching this on YouTube, let's say you're watching this on Spotify or one of the other podcasting apps, it might be the Apple Podcast app or the Amazon Podcast app. If you're listening to it on there, you can actually go and watch this as well. You can watch it on YouTube. So I highly recommend that you go and watch stuff on YouTube because I've got trainings and everything on there as well. So make sure you go and subscribe to it. But if you're watching YouTube, you'll see that I'm holding up a chart. This here is a chart that I've created or my team created, which shows that we have these fear-based responses, but we also have a thrive response. And that's what Maslow, you may have heard me talk about Maslow's hierarchy. Maslow's hierarchy essentially states that at the top of the hierarchy chain, we have something called self-actualization. Self-actualization is where we're trying to get the best out of ourselves. Now, I assume that if you're listening to this, you're trying to self-actualize, which means how do I become the best version of myself? How do I become better within myself? How do I consistently grow and evolve so that I can achieve more, so that I can do more, so that I can become more? That's self-actualization on Maslow's hierarchy. So I call that Thrive. That's why I created the event Thrive Time, because it helps people to self-actualize, to be at the top of the chain, the top 1 to 5% of people who want to grow, who want to be better, who want to do better in life. The leaders of the leaders. These are the people who really are trying to achieve a great life. Now, up the top here, when I align that and put the idea of thriving and self-actualization into David Hawkins' chart around emotions, what he says is that there are these other states, these thrival states, which is courage, neutrality, where you're just more balanced, a willingness, acceptance, where you have the ability to reason effectively, where you can see both goods and bads, rights and wrongs, positives and negatives. He also spoke about love, about the idea of inner peace or enlightenment. And then he said what we do is that we have these empowering affirmations, that we tend to trust more, we tend to be more optimistic, we tend to forgive things. And when I say forgive, I don't mean forget, I mean we actually understand things and you're able to let things go. You tend to release things more effectively and be more empowered. And you live a more meaningful life. So I put that on this chart here and I actually have it on my desk to remind me not to get caught in those negative, disempowering emotions. I don't like even using the word negative, but most people understand the reference. So what I'm saying is that our culture, our life is energy. If we want to see the culture of our life, it's essentially the energy of our life. If you want to see the culture of your family, it's essentially the energy of your family. If you want to see the culture of your working environment, it's essentially the energy of that environment. If you run or are building a business, your culture is essentially the energy of that culture. The same as this community here. This is why I call this community the Driven Mofos, because we have an energy. We're driven. We want to achieve more. We want to do better. We're the leaders of leaders. We're the top 1% of the population. And if you're not there yet, I guarantee you'll get there if you stay in this community, especially if you attend some of my events and programs, we'll get you there. And if your energy sucks because you keep dropping down into those fear-based emotions where you're worried about never having enough, where you don't have enough time, you don't have enough money, you don't have enough energy, you don't have enough support, or you're trapped in this consistent worry about what happens what if things don't work out, then you're always going to be trapped. That's going to be your culture. That's going to be the way you operate. And everyone around you is going to be part of that culture. You may have consistent anger or frustration. You may over-exaggerate and have this level of pride where you think you're better than what you are. Okay, you may have a lot of guilt and shame, but again, that becomes your culture. Your culture becomes your life. Now, if you're a leader, you're leading kids, that's essentially going to be the culture of your family. Your kids will come to you and say, hey, I want to do this. And you say, yeah, but what if? Well, we don't have enough money to do that. Well, I just don't have enough time. And then now all of a sudden your kids are going to be like that. And that's the culture of the home life. If you're a business owner and you always say, well, fuck, I'm not made of money. Well, where do you expect me to get money from? Well, we don't have enough sales. Well, we don't have enough customers. Well, shit, I never have enough time. Then you're going to live in a world of never enough, and that's going to become your culture. That's going to become the energy of the environment that you're around. What I suggest is you really think after this podcast about the energy that you're putting out, because the energy you're putting out is the energy that you're getting back. Also, the energy you're putting out is the culture that you're surrounding yourself with. Because here's the truth. If you hang around somebody like me and you're a consistent chronic complainer, You're fear-based. You're driven by these negative, disempowering emotions. I guarantee I'll hang out with you for about 2 minutes and then I'm out of there, because I will not let somebody like that infect my energy with their shitty energy, because they'll be sucking out my good energy and giving me back shit energy. And essentially they'll be leeching my energy off me. And nobody likes that. No one with high energy likes hanging around with people with low energy. So really think about that energy. Really think about having more courage, being more neutral in your decision making, having a willingness to try things, a willingness to accept what has happened in your past, a willingness to move forward from the past into a greater future, to have good reason to think through things effectively, to have more love to love people around you no matter what they do to you, to let go of that negative shit and to be able to say, you know what, I may not love the action, but I also have to give love and credit to the individual. Okay, and that will give you that inner peace. Watch what happens. Your whole life will change when you start to focus on your energy, because energy really is I guess you could say it's the universal energy, I guess. Everything in the universe is made up of energy. I mean, all you need to do is look at physics. If you go deep enough, we can go to chemistry. Above chemistry, we don't really talk too much about energy. Maybe we do in neurons and the neurological circuits and neurological tissue of the body. But outside of that, most people don't talk about energy in regards to cells or cellular function. When we look at a table or an inanimate object, or sometimes maybe a computer will talk about the energy of the computer that it's using, but very rarely do we talk about energy in the physical form. But once we start going to physics, everything becomes energy. And then if we go below physics into quantum realm, everything is essentially energy. These are all oscillations and vibrations. Everything around us is oscillating and vibrating. We know that, right? It's physics, it's quantum theory, it's quantum physics, it's quantum mechanics. Okay, so you get to decide how you want to live life. I think it's a lot easier to change your energy than to try to change everything physical outside of yourself without changing your energy. It's going to be a lot harder. But it's just something to think about. I want to share, Driven Mofos. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. By the way, if you've enjoyed this episode, please remember sharing's caring. And also, if you haven't rated and reviewed this podcast, please do so, because the more people who rate and review this podcast, the more it gets pushed out to more people and the more that these podcast apps recommend it to other people. Anyway, Driven Mofos, I appreciate you all. Thanks for being part of this absolute epic community of people who want to grow, who want to improve, who want to be better, and also who want to support other people around them to live a kick-ass life. I appreciate you all. Keep kicking ass. Most people waste their life, and I just don't want you to be one of them.